Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're tackling a pretty intriguing concept. To survive, you need to be a philosopher.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Now, before you think we're going full ancient Greece here, don't worry, we're not talking togas and all that.
Right.
It's more about how philosophy can give us real practical tools for dealing with, well, life, all the curveballs it throws at us, and not just to survive, to really thrive.
Exactly.
And we've got a great article we'll be looking at today that really makes the case for this.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's packed with thought-provoking points.
What I found really interesting is how it presents philosophy as something we can actually use every single day.
Oh, for sure.
Not just something that academics debate about in ivory towers.
Yeah.
It argues that thinking deeply about our purpose, our values, how we make decisions, all of that's actually essential for a fulfilling life.
I can definitely relate to that. I've had those moments where I'm facing some tough choice at work,
Oh, yeah.
and that gut feeling just isn't enough.
Yeah.
For like which project is actually going to make a difference.
Right.
Not just, the one that looks good on the resume.
It's all about impact.
Exactly.
It's a perfect example of where philosophy can really step in and offer some guidance.
Okay.
It's about having this clear set of values and ethics that can guide your decisions, because without that,
Yeah.
you're constantly at the mercy of external pressures, right? Just reacting to whatever comes at you instead of acting on what you truly believe in.
So it's like having this inner compass to help navigate all those tricky situations.
Exactly. You nailed it.
How about that?
The article actually highlights Stoicism as a great example of this,
Okay.
especially when you're dealing with a crisis.
Stoicism, so that's the whole stay calm under pressure thing, right?
It's more than just staying calm.
Oh, okay.
It's really about focusing on what you can control
Okay.
and accepting what you can't. And this helps build resilience so you can handle whatever life throws your way.
I see that.
Imagine facing a major setback, like you suddenly lose your job.
Oh, yeah.
A Stoic approach would encourage you to focus on the things you can actually control.
Okay.
It's like updating your resume at work and reaching out to people,
Okay.
instead of dwelling on the things that you simply cannot change.
Right. So instead of panicking, you can channel your energy into taking positive action.
Exactly.
Yeah, that can be super helpful. But philosophy isn't just about reacting to situations, right?
No, absolutely not.
It's also about figuring out what we're even aiming for in the first place.
Exactly. The article makes this really important point.
Yeah.
That without a clear sense of purpose, we're kind of drifting aimlessly through life, right? Feeling unfulfilled. Philosophy encourages us to ask those big, why am I here questions.
Yeah.
And then align our actions with whatever answers we find.
So it's about having a direction, a sense of meaning and purpose.
Totally.
That actually reminds me of something the article mentioned, Ayn Rand's objectivism.
Oh, yes.
Now, it might be a bit controversial,
For sure.
but it definitely pushes you to think about living a very purposeful life.
Oh, absolutely. Objectivism is complex, and not everyone agrees with all of its principles.
Right, of course.
But it is rooted in this idea of rational self-interest
Okay.
and pursuing your values. So whether or not you subscribe to all of objectivism,
Yeah.
it really highlights the importance of defining what a meaningful life looks like to you personally.
Yeah, and then actually going after it.
And then taking action, yes.
Interesting, the article also talks about using rational thinking as a survival skill. That sounds kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about that.
Think of it this way. You're lost in a jungle.
Okay.
Sure, you need those practical survival skills.
Right.
But you also need to assess your surroundings, analyze the risks, and plan your route.
Yeah.
And that's where critical thinking comes in. And philosophy helps us sharpen that.
So it's like having a mental map to go with your survival kit.
Exactly, a mental map.
I like that the article uses the scientific method as an example of this, which makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. The scientific method is all about questioning assumptions, testing ideas,
Yeah.
relying on evidence. And that's a very philosophical approach, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
And it's led to some incredible advancements throughout history. I mean, everything from medicine to technology.
Right. So it's about asking the right questions and then getting to the truth of things.
Yeah.
But surviving isn't just about our individual skills, is it?
No, it's not.
It's also about how we function as a society, and that brings us to ethics.
Yeah, the article emphasizes how philosophy helps us wrestle with questions of right and wrong, forming our moral compass.
Yeah.
And this is crucial for building trust and cooperation in communities, which is essential for survival on a larger scale.
Because without that shared sense of ethics, it would just be utter chaos.
It would be chaos, yeah.
So the article mentions examples like Kantian ethics and utilitarianism.
Yes.
How do those fit into this whole idea?
Those are great examples of how philosophical ideas actually shape our world. So Kantian ethics focuses on universal moral principles,
Okay.
things that are always right or wrong no matter the situation.
I see.
While utilitarianism aims to create the greatest good for the greatest number of people. They offer different ways of thinking about justice, fairness, the common good.
So whether we realize it or not, these philosophical ideas are woven into the very fabric of our laws and policies.
They really are.
That makes me think about how we deal with some of life's tougher aspects. Things like uncertainty and even our own mortality.
Yeah, those big questions.
Does the article address those at all?
It definitely does. It talks about how philosophy can help us approach those big existential questions, death, suffering, the unknown.
Right.
With more acceptance and even curiosity rather than just fear and denial.
That sounds like a challenge, but also incredibly liberating in a way.
It can be both.
The article mentions some powerful examples, right?
It does. It brings up ancient philosophies like Buddhism, which emphasizes the impermanence of all things. And then you have existentialism, which encourages finding meaning in a seemingly absurd world.
Right, makes sense. But are there any more modern examples of how people have used philosophy to deal with these really difficult parts of life?
Absolutely. Yeah, the article talks about Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust.
Oh, wow.
And he developed a form of therapy called logotherapy.
Logotherapy. Huh? That sounds pretty intense.
It is, but in a really powerful way. Frankl believed that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, we can still find meaning. By focusing on our values, our purpose, our connection to something greater than ourselves.
Right.
It's about recognizing that even though we can't always choose our circumstances, we can choose our attitude towards them.
That's an incredible example of how philosophy can really provide strength in those darkest times. But what about the challenges we face today? Information overload, constant distractions, existential anxieties. Can philosophy help us with those too?
The article argues that it can. It points out how philosophy really encourages critical thinking. You can think of it as like a mental filter that helps you evaluate information, distinguish truth from falsehood, and resist getting swept up in trends or societal pressures.
So instead of just absorbing everything that comes at us, we can actually analyze it and decide what's worth paying attention to.
Exactly.
It's like that old saying, don't believe everything you read.
Exactly. And the article mentions a technique called Socratic questioning.
Okay.
Which is a great tool for this.
How so?
It's all about asking probing questions to challenge assumptions and dig deeper into the heart of the matter.
So let's say you're scrolling through social media and you come across a post that makes you angry or upset. Instead of just reacting emotionally, you could use Socratic questioning to examine, the source of the information, the author's intentions, whether the post actually aligns with your own values.
That's a perfect example. It's about taking a step back and engaging with information critically instead of just accepting it at face value. And this can be so helpful in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages trying to influence our opinions and behaviors.
It's like having a built-in BS detector.
Exactly.
I like that. But on a more personal level, can philosophy actually make us emotionally stronger? It seems like it's all about thinking. So I'm curious how that translates to our feelings.
That's a great question. The article suggests that philosophy can help us develop emotional intelligence.
Okay.
It's about understanding our own desires, fears, attachments, gaining insight into how our minds work.
So it's not about suppressing emotions, but about understanding them better so we can manage them more effectively.
Exactly. For instance, Stoicism, which we talked about earlier, is incredibly helpful for cultivating emotional resilience.
Okay, how so?
It encourages us to focus on what we can control and accept what we can't, even when it comes to our emotions.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by anxiety or anger, we can use Stoic principles to acknowledge those feelings without letting them control us.
Right.
I'm thinking of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who practiced Stoicism. Didn't he write a whole book about it?
He did. It's called Meditations, and it's basically a collection of his personal reflections on Stoic philosophy.
Oh, wow.
It's a great example of how we can use philosophical principles to navigate the challenges of everyday life, including all the emotional ups and downs.
That's really interesting. So we've talked about how philosophy can help us individually, but can it also drive progress on a societal level?
Yeah.
It seems like a pretty big idea, but the article hints at that possibility.
It absolutely does. The article highlights how philosophical ideas have shaped civilizations throughout history.
Like how?
Think about the concept of democracy.
Okay.
It originated in ancient Greece, fueled by philosophical debates about governance and the rights of citizens.
That's a great example. And then there's the Enlightenment with thinkers like John Locke and Rousseau, who championed individual liberty and human rights.
Exactly.
Those ideas have had a profound impact on the world we live in today.
They really have. It shows that philosophy isn't just about abstract theories, it has real-world consequences.
Right.
By asking questions like, what kind of society do we want to create, and how can we live together justly? Philosophers have helped shape a better future for humanity.
So it's not an exaggeration to say that philosophy has played a key role in driving progress throughout history.
Not at all.
That makes me think about what truly sets us apart as humans. What distinguishes us from, say, animals that rely solely on instinct for survival.
Yeah.
The article seems to suggest that philosophy has something to do with it.
It makes the point that while animals primarily rely on instinct, humans have the capacity for reason and abstract thought, and philosophy refines these capabilities, allowing us to not only survive, but to flourish.
So it's about going beyond simply meeting our basic needs and asking those deeper questions about the meaning of life, our purpose, and how we want to live. It's about making conscious choices rather than simply reacting to our environment. It's not just about staying alive, it's about what makes life worth living, right?
Precisely. It's about that conscious reflection, that pursuit of wisdom that allows us to move beyond just existing and create a life that is truly meaningful.
It sounds like to survive, be a philosopher is more than just a catchy phrase.
Right.
It's a call to action. It's an invitation to engage with life on a deeper level, to think critically and to really take ownership of how we live.
And what's really important is that the article makes it clear that philosophy isn't just for academics or intellectuals.
Right.
It's a set of tools and insights that can benefit everyone, regardless of who they are or what they do.
Because at the end of the day, we all grapple with those big questions about life, about who we are, what we're doing here, what it all means. And philosophy can give us a framework for exploring those questions and finding our own answers.
And in a world that's increasingly complex and chaotic, that ability to think critically, to find meaning, and to make wise choices is more valuable than ever.
It's like philosophy gives us a superpower, the power to navigate life with purpose, resilience, and even a sense of wonder.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect point to leave our listeners with. In a world overflowing with information and distractions, perhaps the most valuable survival skill is the ability to think critically and deeply, to question and to seek wisdom. That's where philosophy comes in.
So to everyone listening out there, embrace your inner philosopher. Ask those big questions, challenge your assumptions, and never stop seeking wisdom. It might just be the key to not just surviving, but truly thriving. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.